Gamescom has just passed, and Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord was there to show itself off with all its prowess and glory. Not only was it showing off the full release version of the game that we're going to be getting on the 25th of October this year, but what's more is they showed off the new console versions as well. I had my reporter in the field, Sexy Biscuit, a fellow YouTube channel that covers this type of thing, to go ahead and ask some questions that you guys had pitched to taleworlds. I added a few in myself, but most of these are from the community post that I put up a few weeks ago. So without further ado, let's actually find out everything we need to know about the next version of Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Let's quickly talk about the console version and the controls. They are locked within the version, depending on where you're playing, whether it's PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox One X, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, you cannot customize your control and change them to your liking, but I guess that just makes it easier to change and support through the various amount of console platforms. Another big question was, will there be modding support within the console versions of the game? Now, that definitely won't be on release. We can say that now. But is that something that we might see in the future? Well, it's a bit hit and miss. You see, taleworlds mentioned that it's very different, adding modding tools to console versions. On PC, you have one platform. Whilst there were various sets of hardware, you have one version of the game or modding tools that you need to be able to push. However, when it comes to console, you have Sony and Microsoft. They're going head-to-head, fighting for different variations of the same title. So being able to push modding tools that work on both is vastly more complicated, and it has specific requirements for each console depending on which one you're working on. Taleworlds always provide a lot of access when it comes to the modding community, and that's why the modding community has reached the levels that it has today, getting these massive overhauls. But it comes with its downfalls. It means when transferring those same modding tools onto console, you run into a brick wall of the companies that own said consoles. Giving that level of access is very, very tricky and almost impossible. So will there be a lot of access for modders? No. Will there be modding tools on console at all? Maybe. Of course, as mentioned, it won't be upon release, but there may be a compromise later on down the line. It's not going to be a deep, in-depth overhaul modding tools, but maybe a light version, doing tweaks and changes, and maybe slight reskins in the future. But I wouldn't go ahead and buy the console version if you think there's going to be modding on it. Next, I want to talk about the comparisons between the PC and the console version. Are they going to be out of sync? Are they going to be updated at the same time, or is the console version going to be, well, 2 years behind the PC version because it was released 2 years after? Well, how about the developers answer this themselves?
Will the console version be updated at the same time as PC, or will they be out of sync?
It's something that we definitely want to do, to keep the console and the PC in sync. As far as it's viable, we will do that.
Okay, brilliant.
Certainly on release, it will be the same.
Okay.
There might be, some hot fixes, some specific things that maybe just concern PC as well, that we'll just push out there, and vice versa. If something's just broken on consoles, we'll just fix it there.
Okay.
I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, they are two different platforms, and as we'll get onto, they're not exactly the same with how the games are going to run. So if there are issues on console, they might not have the same issues on PC, and that's very likely, at least to start with. The console is a completely new release. Taleworlds have had 2.5 years to get used to the PC version and how to properly make it work on that system while it's out in public hands. But they haven't had the chance to get all the bugs sorted and all the issues sorted with the console version, or at least things that the public managed to find out in multiplayer settings. So they're going to have different hotfixes, but it's nice to see that they're actually going to be in conjunction with each other. So that brings up the question, will there be any sync between the two in terms of crossplay? Will multiplayer be able to go between Xbox, PS4 and PC? Well, they kind of touched on it a little bit.
There won't be crossplay between the different platforms, but you can sort of do it cross-gen. So PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox X. And you will, I think, also be able to use your save games from the Xbox and continue playing it when you have the game on Windows Store.
Okay.
The only limitation there is there's not a loophole where you can mod the game on Windows Store version and then take it to the console.
Okay. Yes.
God damn it. Oh, that's a shame. I was actually thinking that would that mean we could loophole it? But no, apparently not. One thing that I did take from that really got my interest was the fact that you can change saves between Xbox and Windows Store. Now, granted, I don't have Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord on the Windows Store. I have it on Steam, like any self-respecting player would. But there is that possibility, because I do think I'm going to be getting it on Xbox as well, that I can then transfer that save over onto my PC version if I maybe want to play battles a bit bigger with more troops. But that's something we'll get into a little bit later. One of the big questions I got about content is the inclusion of ship combat within the game. I mean, we've seen it in Mount and Blade Napoleonic Wars and the Brighton World mod, so would it be making an appearance within Bannerlord?
Is there any chance of ship combat in the game? Because it was in the previous ones.
No, it wasn't.
It was in Napoleonic Wars.
That's a DLC.
I was right, though. No. Is that a no?
There won't be ship combat at release now.
I'm just going to get off my horse in disappointment.
There's always questions when a console version of a game comes out with whether the priority will be with one or another or evenly split. And whilst they are the same title, as we've already mentioned, there might be fixes that need to go in the console version that don't go in the PC version, or vice versa. So how are they going to be divided up? How is that going to work? Is the PC going to get full priority and the console version is just going to be there, or is it going to be even like it kind of really should be?
Do intend to continue supporting the game. So if you're worried about, okay, you know, they're going to cut their losses, they're never going to update again, that's not the case.
That's actually one of the questions, kind of.
I'm going too much on
No, that's good. So that kind of asks about which version is getting priority. So is it going to be PC's going to be your main focus and console's going to be the secondary focus, or are you going to be splitting the team on both and having this equal amount of
it's
time?
one game, right? So as far as gameplay content is concerned,
Yeah.
it's not much of a difference. Like,
Brilliant, because some companies will release a game on PC and then release a version on console and then just kind of forget about the console version. So that's...
I mean, the console version will receive the same updates. Ideally, both console and PC will be updated at the same time. And so as far as gameplay content is concerned, as far as like features are concerned, that should be kept congruent. Beyond things, well, but I can't even say that. Like, we already have the controller on PC. So even the controllers are like going to be
ready.
shared. So yeah, I don't think there is any difference that I can point to as to what we wouldn't develop on console or in turn on PC.
One thing that I think is actually really interesting that is mentioned in this interview is a question is asked about whether we'll get more than the battle sizes at the moment. Of course, on PC, custom battles you can set to 1,000 versus 1,000 agents, right? But you'll only get 500 versus 500 on the battlefield at one time. They've said that that could be increased in the future, but the game really needs to be stable before that is done. However, there are mods that can implement bigger troop games and all that sort of stuff. But one little side note that was just mentioned is that I didn't actually know that horses counted as agents. So if you have a full cavalry battle with only horsemen, you're actually seeing 250 versus 250 rather than 500 versus 500, because everybody's on a horse and that horse counts as an agent. You might think that sounds a bit ridiculous to start with, but remember, the horse has separate health to the player themselves or the agent that's on top of them. So if the guy dies and falls off their horse, the horse can run away and still live, or you can get on that horse. The horses do need to be separate agents as well. I don't know, I just thought that was a kind of interesting tidbit that I actually hadn't really thought about, but it makes a lot of sense. But what about multiplayer, okay? Multiplayer has been a big talking point with the new additions of custom servers and the modding API for multiplayer. So is that going to be increased? Are we going to see bigger and bigger multiplayer servers in the future?
Any plans on increasing multiplayer server sizes or letting modders do it at their own risk?
We were talking also, again, with another community member who dropped by about doing some additional stress tests because they were into organizing multiplayer events. So that is, of course, like, we also like the idea of having these big events, big battle sieges, etc. But it kind of comes back comes back to the same thing as for single player, right? Where you can only really get into that once what you have is really, really solid.
Yeah, because that would crash the game immediately if you had like 3,000 people playing at once.
3,000 definitely not.
No.
Yeah, you need to make sure that it actually works first and foremost.
Yeah.
And the game is, in my opinion, in a pretty good state.
Yeah.
And there are always things that we can improve. With the multiplayer, I'm not personally like a huge expert, so sure.
No, I play single player. I don't even play multiplayer.
Like, what are you talking about? And they might be right. I don't know. But yeah, before we go into like battle size increase, etc., I think we've got to, let's get the custom servers out.
Yeah.
Let's get the multiplayer modding capability out. Let's make, with the custom servers, the battle mode accessible to everyone. I think those things would be coming first before we really delve into pushing the boundaries on the battle space.
So there we have it. Many, many big changes coming to Bannerlord on its full release. Also, I don't know why they had to bully me at the end there.
This is going to be on Resonance channel. So, hi. Hello. Go follow me on Sexy
really,
Biscuit.
I don't see why he didn't come.
Yeah, right? Like, you got me to do it. Like,
so really, you should upload it yourself.
I should. Yeah, screw you, Resonant. I'm uploading this myself. Thank you very much.
But thank you once again to taleworlds for indulging me with some more sensible and some less sensible questions from you guys. Hey, it is how it is. But also to Sexy Biscuit for going to Gamescom and whilst they were there, interviewing taleworlds and giving me some great content that I'm really excited to share with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a dislike if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.